Hey, everybody, Dr. Meri Crowley for Now is the Time. And I'm really excited and honored to have Robert Morss on my show today. Robert Morss is known as Lego Man. He was the political prisoner, literally after the J6, and was in the DC Gulag for I don't know how long. He was literally in prison for 3.5 years. And it's an unbelievable story we're going to be talking about today. But before we do that, today's program is sponsored by QE Strong and the red light therapy. Let's roll that commercial, please.
The last time Rob was here with his red light therapy, we sold out during the program. The fountain of youth is red light.
It really helps your body in dramatic ways, not only in the skin surface level, but it goes in deep. It's got near infrared as well, so it goes in deep into the body and helps the mitochondrial process work more effectively.
NASA-inspired technology is this red light, and you can get it in all sorts of places. I mean, the Hollywood people use this all the time, right? The fancy folks. Yeah, athletes, Hollywood folks. It shuts down joint pain, melts inches off your waistline. Harvard, Stanford, NASA, like I mentioned, recharging your cells, reducing inflammation and pain. My wife's been using it on her hip and upper leg. Pain has reduced, mobility has improved. Even our dog loves it. Does this really help animals too?
We've got these amazing mats that compare with these $8,000 panels that are just super expensive because they work, but these mats are just as effective. And then we combine it with our quantum energy frequencies. With the code today, it's like $597, right? So we sell them typically for $1,200. We're going to send you an amazing bottle of Exodus, which has 7 biblical herbs and the molecular hydrogen.
You only have 40 of these available because production is apparently a little slow. At QEstrong.com, achieve $597 after your $100 Gruber discount.
Yeah, so this is actually a new product. Go to QEstrong.com, put in my promo code Meri. Not only will you get the red light therapy mat, which is normally, as you heard him say, over $1,200, but you'll also get a bottle of the Exodus Strong that has, an incredible nutrients and herbs that will really maintain your vitality. And it will help you become like Robert so you can fight anything. So it's a great deal. I love Rob Renee. He's an amazing man of God and an amazing, they have the patches and a number of other things. So anyway, QEstrong.com, promo code Meri, or click on the link below. Well, anyway, Robert, great to have you on the show today. I'm just still getting over this hoarse voice I've had for like 2 weeks, but starting to get better. But in the meantime, Robert, you are like, to me, a mighty man of God. You were pardoned by the president. In fact, there's a little video. We're going to run the clip in a minute. But what happened? Explain a little bit what happened to you. You're known as Lego Man. Explain that.
Sure. So, just for a little bit of context, and I appreciate your accolades. I left home at 17 to join the Army. I ended up becoming a Ranger in 2nd Ranger Battalion, deployed to Afghanistan 3 times on 3 combat deployments. But my first deployment was when I learned that the devastation and wasteland of Afghanistan would follow me home if the next generation did not know how to keep this republic. And so that's when I dedicated my entire adult life to becoming a high school history teacher. I thought that my impact in the classroom would be more effective than my impact, behind a rifle in a foreign land. And so that's what I did. I used my GI Bill to go to Penn State. And on my senior year at Penn State, that's when we watched the pandemic. That's when we watched the Summer of Love. That's when we had the vaccine mandates that were killing more people than the actual virus at a Wuhan lab that our government sponsored, but that's a whole nother story. But we also watched the election get stolen. And to me, all of these events kind of just compiled into letting me know that I have to get involved in the affairs of my country again. And that led me to the Capitol steps on January 6th to protest the stolen election, to use my First Amendment right and responsibility to say that we shouldn't certify the Electoral College results because it was a botched election, and the investigation out of Georgia confirms that. And so it's been a ballad. It's been a wild story. But long story short, because of my actions on January 6th, I would be arrested on the last day of my teaching year, June 11th, 2021. Luckily, it wasn't in front of the high school that I was teaching at the time. It was in front of my apartment. But I would be arrested and spend the next 3.5 years behind bars, pardoned by the president. And but the day that they arrested me, though, is when the FBI entered my apartment, and I'm assuming they're trying to find really dangerous objects and really incriminatory stuff. But what they found was the Constitution. I didn't even have a TV in my apartment. My like centerpiece of entertainment was a big bookshelf. I had two couches that faced each other with a table in between, and when I would host parties or have guests over, we would read to each other, just like our ancestors used to. So they're passing a bunch of that boring stuff, but then they get to a nuclear stockpile of Legos. Now, I brought Legos into the classroom to help the students kind of chill out, but I also love Legos unabashedly. I think they awaken the engineer in all of us. And I had, at the time of my arrest, a Lego model kit of the United States Capitol that Lego company distributed. The FBI walks in here, they see this Lego set, and the blockheads of the FBI, according to the New York Post and Miranda Devine's article, they surmise that because I was in possession of a Capitol Lego set, I then am also responsible for orchestrating the entire January 6th riot. I'm not even kidding. I wish I was. They called me the architect of the insurrection. They put this in my court documents. And the only time the judge said anything honorable or intellectually sound throughout the entire 3.5 years of my incarceration, when the FBI brought this evidence in court, the judge says, "How is any of this possible if the Legos are still in the box?" So the Legos were still in the box. So I'm either a Jedi master and I can plan an entire insurrection that was unarmed, by the way, of 2 million people with a Lego set still in its cardboard container, or the FBI is lying. So you get to decide on that one. But the internet never forgot, and the Lego Man was born, and that's why I have the moniker. But we're going to get into more stuff later on in the interview, how this name plays a huge role into this stuff, because I'm not letting it go for a specific reason. But yeah, that's why I'm the Lego Man.
Well, and we have a video. Let's roll that video that really shows just a minute clip about, kind of goes over just what you've experienced. Let's run that clip.
1 year ago today, I was pardoned by the President of the United States.
Wow. Well, that's amazing, Robert.
It's been an exciting year.
So, let's roll this back a little bit of your past. You did 3 tours in Afghanistan?
Yes, ma'am. So I was in 2nd Ranger Battalion within the Special Operations community, going on kill capture missions every single night. And at that point in time, though, I was regrettably in Obama's military. Task Force 310 was responsible for 70% of the kills and captures that were conducted within our jurisdiction of that area of the world. So the op tempo was very high. I learned a lot of good lessons while I was a ranger. It's actually helped me throughout my entire life. It definitely helped me survive prison and to kind of navigate that invisible minefield. And it's also helped me become the CEO of my own production company, which is amazing. So God has been authoring my steps, knowing what I was about to encounter in the future. And it's just another reason why trusting him is such a good idea, because I have been prepared for everything. For every new chapter, I revert back to my training in the last chapter. And oddly enough, being a Penn State grad high school history teacher and ranger is a really good method of surviving prison without getting in a single fight in over 3.5 years.
Well, that's amazing. Well, I was there on January 6th too. And, of course, that was our right as
Mhm.
citizens of the United States to go, and basically it's freedom of speech. I
Yep.
heard President Trump on the ellipse saying peacefully and patriotically, go down to the Capitol, which we did. It was really long. His speech for that day, it was really cold. And I
Yes.
remember marching down Constitution Avenue, getting a call from my friend Rick McDonald, who actually saw these vans pull up. He saw what they were doing, and he said, they're storming the Capitol. This was definitely a plan. So explain from your context what happened when you were there that day, Robert.
Absolutely. And you're exactly right. Matter of fact, a buddy of mine and I, his name is Kelly Meggs. He's the leader of the Florida Oath Keepers chapter. He and I wrote a book called One Question Remains while we were in prison together, and had it smuggled out of prison, essentially describing not just the context of January 6th, but the entire buildup, starting from 2016 all the way up to that cold day in January in 2021, so that the reader can understand exactly how we felt that day, how I felt, how you felt. So it's called One Question Remains. It's the only book on your bookshelf that can boast that this was smuggled out of an American prison. But yeah, I mean, what you'll read is that I was going home. I had a job interview the very next day. Like, I was not trying to overthrow the United States government, especially with a plastic children's toy. That was not on my bingo card, okay? But what I saw was the Capitol police officers shield bashing old ladies, deliberately shooting the crowd. A buddy of mine, Joshua Black, was completely shot in the face with the non-lethal round. It went through his cheek. I saw his blood on the ground. They went to great lengths to instigate the crowd into violence, and they knew that the Antifa, that has also been confirmed, that was hiding amongst us wearing MAGA hats and MAGA gear, were also instigating. So the real patriots, like you and I, that were present that day, were quite literally caught in between a rock and a hard place. Because you got the Capitol police officers here that are instigating the crowd, like what I witnessed when the Capitol Police arced their grenade launchers at a certain degree so that they could shoot over the men, but into the women and children of the largest pro-Trump Asian support I'd ever seen in my entire life, which they have escaped communism. They know what a communist dictatorship and overthrow looks like. So if anyone knows that this was a setup, it's them. I watched that flashbang blow up in the faces of those kids, and that's when I ran in. So you got that on this side. Then on the other side, you have the Antifa members whispering sweet nothings into the ears of everybody else, or revving everybody up, or like Ray up, saying, we need to go into the Capitol. On top of all the emotional stimuli, have chemical irritants being sprayed, which is going to kick every single veteran into a fight or flight response. That same CS gas that they were unleashing on us is the exact same stuff they used in my infantry school for us to go through the gas chamber to be qualified as an infantryman. So, and the same kind of training happens to a police officer. And so, chemically, emotionally, and 100% spiritually and physically, everybody was being just cajoled into acting out of character that day. So I got sucked into the lobster trap. I've been calling it a lobster trap for years now. And that's exactly how I'm going to make sure that that day is remembered. Um, because the machinations of the government made sure that Trump's own movement was going to be hijacked as a battering ram against the certification results of a fraudulent election, but no one had the guts to call it out, 3 o'clock in the morning when they reconvened. And it was supposed to deny Trump access to the White House ever again. And it almost worked because, when they were locking everybody up, they came after us with such force. They had Bearcats, they had They had the tanks, they had the helicopters, they had the Humvees, they had like such suppressive firepower. When they arrested all of us, it wasn't for us. It was for the rest of the American people to witness so that they know, don't you ever stand up to tyranny in this country ever again. And that was the point. It was to intimidate and essentially rob the hope of the American people at the expense of a few.
Well, I also know Trennis Evans and Ashley Babbitt's mother. I met Mickey. I've had lunch with her and
Both
interviewed her
incredible
several
people.
times. She was actually, one of the victims. She was killed,
Yep.
and nothing happened to her. And there was other people that were killed.
Yep.
What was it Roseanne Boylan?
Yeah,
How
so Ashley Babbitt was shot and killed by Michael Byrd. Roseanne Boylan was beaten to death by Lilo Morris, who then got rewarded with tickets to the Super Bowl that year. Benjamin Phillips and Kevin Greason, they were both shot with flashbangs and they were dead before they hit the ground because their hearts gave out because the detonation and the concussion of those grenades literally sent those old men into, shock or whatever. So 4 patriots were murdered that day that
Yeah.
no one talks about. 5 police officers did not die that day. There's not a single one of them that on their gravestone says January 6th. Um, Brian Sicknick died of natural causes the very next day, also a Trump supporter. And every other police officer, those 4 Trump police officers died, one as far as July of 2021, also Trump supporters. So you tell me what you think happened to them, and we already know that the Clinton stacked bodies more than the mafia, if there is one. And it's just one of those things where it's like, dude, this was a setup from the get-go, and people that had the wherewithal to come clean and spill the beans on how much of a lobster trap that day was, I think they got Clintoned.
Wow. The Clinton body count you're talking about. That's
Yeah.
well, anyway, so this was all a setup. I know Trennis Evans has told me that literally they came to his door, with guns, with scopes. I mean, I forget, 13-year-old son came to the door and they had a red dot on his son's forehead. I
Yeah.
mean, this has happened. How many people did this happen to of the ones that were arrested?
Almost every single one. I mean, I at the time didn't have any wife or children, but a buddy of mine, Padilla, his wife, still has PTSD from the fact that in her nightgown, she's got red dot sites all over her body, of lasers being pointed at her, of several men willing to shoot her and kill her. My buddy, Bobby DeGregoris, really good friend of mine, also an employee of the company. He states that he did hardly anything wrong the day of to warrant this, but when the FBI entered his house, he's a proud father of 5 now. He just had his 5th child. At the time of his arrest, the FBI saw fit to point a loaded pistol in the crib where his baby was sleeping. And if you Google that right now, FBI points pistol at baby crib, that exists. They were willing to kill our friends and family over this whole thing. And so the FBI, I don't think I will ever trust. I don't think they've cleaned it out enough. And frankly, they should have shut it all down in the first place and started something fresh. But you've got really sick and twisted people in that organization and throughout all of our federal agencies, frankly, that are waking up every single day wondering, how much more can I ruin America? How much more of a communist dictatorship can I turn this country into? And how can I manipulate the American people into obeying the law so that our law doesn't become a constitutional republic, but a despotic tyranny?
Wow. Well, so now you get arrested, and where were you when they came and arrested you?
I was in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania at the time.
But were you in your apartment, or where were you?
Yeah, so I was in my apartment. Thank God that I wasn't arrested in front of the high school that I had been teaching at. And I have a suspicion that they probably wanted to do that because theatrics was what they were actually after.
Hmm.
But my theory is that they contacted the principal, letting him know, hey, you've got a domestic terrorist working in your organization, and we'd like to get him. And I guarantee you, the principal begged him no, because we had 2 teachers that semester die within 2 weeks of getting the COVID shot. So the student body had already been traumatized as it was. And so I believe that a deal was cut to arrest me outside of my apartment. And that's where it happened, and I go into that in the other book that we can talk about a little bit later on. But, I woke up that morning, January 11th, June 11th, feeling refreshed, best sleep I had had in months, because I knew that I had been hunted since January 6th. The Damocles sword weighed heavy upon me, and I just got the best sleep of my entire life. And I know that I can trust you and your audience with this, because this is a Christian audience. But when I woke up that day, and I'll never forget it, I literally heard the voice of God, and I've never heard it like this before. But I woke up out of bed, and I felt as though that someone grabbed my shirt and yanked me up out of bed to the, upright sitting position. And the words that I heard were, "Who the Son sets free is free indeed. I'm a child of God. Yes, I am. In my Father's house, there's a place for me. I'm a child of God. Yes, I am." And I kept repeating that over and over and over again, to the point where I couldn't get it out of my head. And as a matter of fact, those are some of the last text messages I ever sent out to my mother, to some of my friends. And I was confused by this. Why is God saying this to me? I know it's a Hillsong lyric, which is based off the Bible. But it occurred to me as I was being driven away from my apartment, and I'm looking at my former life just totally evaporate in front of me, that it didn't matter if I was incarcerated by the FBI, because who the Son sets free is free indeed. It didn't matter that I was about to spend X amount of days behind bars, because in my Father's house, there's a place for me. And it didn't matter that I had an imposter president telling me that I was a domestic terrorist and an insurrectionist, because I am a child of God. Yes, I am. And that kind of bedrock to go through the entire underworld journey with really kept me going.
Wow. Well, so now let's explain the trial. So now you go through a trial. What was that like?
Yeah, so it was a pathetic experience. I learned a year and a half into my incarceration, after getting my discovery, which is illegal, by the way, that the FBI waited until the last day of school to hurt me. This is their email traffic that's in my discovery. So wounding me and my American attitude was always the point. I was behind bars for almost 2 years before I went to trial. How illegal is that? That's ridiculous. And at trial, I get completely destroyed. I get hit with 3 charges that stuck. One was an assault, with a simple assault charge, which if I were to, come over to your house in California and flick your elbow, I would be guilty of that. The other was a robbery charge, which, if you look at the way that the robbery charge is written, it can only qualify if it's done over maritime waters or in a territory. So unless I was a pirate trying to steal somebody's shield or fence and put it in my back pocket and then sail off to the high seas, the charge doesn't even stick. And then in addition to that, and this is the third and final charge, which is the most problematic for the government to prove, which is the 1512 charge, obstruction of an official proceeding charge. And if anybody in the DOJ has any sense, they will track this charge down and actually indict the judges that convicted people of this, because in the year of 2024, over that summer, the 1512 charge was determined that it was unconstitutionally applied. Now, this is the same charge that was cooked up in the Enron case. It's supposed to, be in regard to evidence and witness tampering. And the way that it was used on us, they try to claim that even though that we're in the wrong building for obstruction of an official proceeding to take place, somehow this applies to us. But the reason why this charge was picked was because it carried up to 20 years. If you just hit me with a robbery and assault and I went away for 6 months, but you're also calling me a domestic terrorist, that doesn't add up. So they needed a charge that would carry to that amount of time, so that if I went away for, a decade or more or whatever, it would make sense to the public opinion. So the whole thing was a setup from the time of my arrest to that trial, and frankly the day of. Everything was designed for us to fail, for our constitutional rights to be shredded, and for no one to come save us because they're either too intimidated or too broke or too confused. It was really a frustrating time.
Well, that's incredible, Robert. I'm so sorry that you and many of these other ones had to go through this. How many people, Robert, were arrested and incarcerated?
So I know that pardons were issued to about almost 1,600 people. However, there was only a handful of about a couple hundred that actually did hard time for over a year or more. And I'm one of them, so that was the crazy thing. There was a lot of people that might have done a month or two or, whatever. But for whatever reason, they really went after the veterans. They went after the law enforcement. They went after people like my fiance who were willing to do everything they could to hold the government accountable, and be willing to do something about it to keep their country free. So it was very frustrating. Very small amount of the American population, but it was actually very interesting too, because throughout this entire gruesome sojourn that I went through, I got to be able to relate to some of the men of the Bible, like Job, like Jonah, like Joseph, on a very personal level. As a matter of fact, when I was in the Allegheny County Jail, the Pittsburgh jail, and I requested a Bible, I was given a Bible from the chaplain, and within the Bible, my request form was in Genesis, in the very chapter where Joseph is betrayed by his family and he begins his journey. And the chaplain did that on purpose, either because he understood what was going on or because God told him to. But there were so many ways in which, throughout my entire journey through the underworld, God was there. Can I tell you about the book, because that's like a perfect way to include this, because this is exactly what this is about.
Oh
So
yeah, yeah. Go ahead.
in the 3.5 years that I was behind bars, I lost track of how often God showed up. But I did my absolute best within that, year long of time that you featured on the video, to catalog 3.5 years worth of stories in 41 short stories, which 41, if you study your Bible, is always the day of deliverance. For 40 days and 40 nights, something lasted. But then on the 41st day, everything changed. Whether, David kills Goliath, or whether Noah finds evidence of land, or whether Jesus begins his ministry after being tempted in the desert. On the 41st day, everything gets better. So in the book Still There, which you can find on Amazon, you will learn what it's like to be a political prisoner. You will learn how David literally closed the mouths of the lions as I passed through their den, and you will find hope and a rekindled spirit to make America great again, so that you don't end up wearing oranges as well, and that the atrocity, the constitutional atrocity that January 6th was, never gets repeated. So that's a good book. It's on Amazon now. You got to find it, and it's a
Wow.
part of our heritage as America.
I'm so sorry. It hasn't done this, and this is in a. We'll edit this out too,
That's
Curtis.
okay.
Well, anyway, Robert, I know other people that were involved with the in the DC Gulag. In fact, Randy, Ashley Babbitt's mother, there was many people that would be outside that jail. They call it the DC Gulag, and they prayed, they sang, they
Yeah.
fasted for a long time. What was it like inside that prison or that jail?
Well, it was pretty horrific. In the beginning of our incarceration of the DC Gulag, everybody hated us. The inmate population, the prison guards, the administration of the prison, everybody hated us. And but after having worked to expose the horrific conditions of the jail, the inmate population actually started to realize that, these January Sixers are actually going up against the same enemy, which is the federal government. And the federal government is absolutely responsible for the destitution that the Black demographic in America is, succumbed to, with the fatherlessness being endorsed by our own government. So after a while, things really did start to improve. After a while of hard work and dedication, prayer and fasting, conditions did start to improve a little bit. And I think that the jail started to realize that these are not average inmates. And I played a significant role in trying to keep morale going. And you'll learn about it in that book, Still There. There was a time where guys were really about to give up. And I'm not kidding you. I thought that people were really going to start committing suicide. And me and a buddy of mine named Jeff Sable got together and we thought, man, what can we do? How can we fix the morale? How can we uplift these men from the conditions that they're under? And I came up with the idea, hey, let's do comedy and talent shows and we'll call them hopium dens, and we'll do everything we can to make them laugh and forget where they are for an hour. So, and I learned from the military that anything you would ask somebody to do, you have to be willing to do yourself. So I volunteered to break in the hopium dens by singing "I'll Make a Man Out of You" from the Mulan cartoon in costume in front of 60 men that I did not know from Adam at all, to kick off the first hopium den. And it was an absolute blast. We all had a great time together. And the hopium dens were born, and you'll learn a lot about that in the book Still There. But the cool thing about that is that that was technically my first production that I ever did. And I used that and my litany of experiences while I was incarcerated to launch my own production company. And this whole thing kind of comes full circle with this. So while I was incarcerated, I wrote a script about a guy who really did live over 2,000 years ago, whose name you don't know because it has been hidden from you by every government since his death, because nobody wants the population to stand up to tyranny the way that this guy actually did. And he too watched his republic die. Well, I wrote an incredible script about him, and knowing that if I were to sell it to Hollywood, they would tarnish it and warp it, and you'd see a bunch of weird trannies, stomping all over an amazing story that's almost identical to what we're going through right now in America. And so, in order to insulate this great story, I created my own production company. And since this story has to do with Romans, and they spoke Latin to one another. The same guy that I referenced to sadly had the FBI agent point a pistol at his infant child in the crib. He approached me and he said, "Hey, do you know what Lego man means in Latin?" And I said, "I have no idea. Lego man in Greek, means like I speak, so that's kind of cool. But Lego man in Latin has a very specific meaning that I know for a fact is divine, in accordance with what I'm now going to do with my life." See, we both believe in a God that renames men. Abram was renamed Abraham after passing the test of faith. Jacob was renamed Israel after wrestling with the angel of the Lord all night long. And Saul was renamed Paul after his, Damascus conversion. I have been renamed Lego Man. And Lego Man in Latin means I anoint men, or I assemble men. And so I have been renamed a name that means I'm going to anoint and assemble men. And what better name to give a production company that's about to make faith-based films worth fighting for, that reclaim our culture, that restore our heroes, that make violent, edgy, gritty movies that everybody loves to watch, but then also honor God at the exact same time. What better name than Lego Men Productions for a production company that's going to go on the offensive in the culture war and be what everybody's been asking and praying for? A story that matters, and a story that inspires the next generation to keep this republic. At Lego Man Productions, that's exactly what we're going to offer. We're already in works of a January 6th themed movie about how me and my fiance went through our own hero's journey and then fell in love by the time everything ended, and we met in June of last year after we both had been pardoned by the president. So the way that Titanic had a love story wrapped around it and was a blockbuster hit, we're about to do the same thing with January 6th. Fix that whole history, go on the offensive in the culture war, show everybody, what January 6th was actually about, but then show the world that you can have the entire federal government barreling down on you, but if you trust in God, you too can survive. One of my favorite lines out of the Bible is Job 13:15, which says, "Though you slay me, still I trust you." And that's ultimately the theme of everything that we're going to do, not just in the J6 movie, but everything that Legoman Productions is going to crank out. Make movies that inspire men to not just return to the fold, but then fight and keep this republic. Because not only are they inspired to, but they know that God hates a coward and God loves the warrior spirit that he has blessed us all with. So we're at the
Well,
point of
Robert,
pre-production right now.
I just want to say that, I'm in Hollywood, I'm in LA. And 20 years ago, the Lord spoke to me to build a studio to rival Disney and call it Destiny. And the only film I've done is about sex trafficking in America called Freedom Cry. But now we're putting together a major motion picture that I've been working on for 20 years. But he told me the greatest movies, music has yet to be released. And we're at that time because the demonic realm or the deep state has used the movies and the music to capture culture. But God is exposing this, and we are going to be the ones, Lego Man Productions and Destiny Studios, and many others that are going to come forth. And though they might try to shut our voices down, like even today, I mean, this is a sign, the show must go on. And so now my voice is getting strength again. Because we continue to push past, the pain, and then we push past the problems. We push past, and we are the victors, not the victims. So
now is the time, right? Come on now.
Amen. So now, as we close, I want to, how people can get a hold of you. But before I do that, I'm sensing that there's several that I feel God's heart on this one.
Okay.
That were in the DC Gulag and other places that literally didn't make it. They actually committed suicide because they were pushed beyond the breaking point. Why don't you talk about that for a minute? Because, we want to focus on the good, but we want to remember those ones.
Of course. Well, I can say this, I know that Matthew Perna was arrested out of the nearby or the same county that I was arrested out of in Pennsylvania. And had I the honor and pleasure of doing time side by side with him, though he took his own life prior to being, incarcerated and wearing the clothes of a slave like I did, I know that I would have been able to keep him alive. And so it's a tragic thing. This government has so much blood on its hands. I mean, look at the revelations that we just, discovered this last week. But I will say that there are men that lost hope before they really got into the meat grinder to realize that they were way stronger than they thought, which is another reason why these movies are so important, is to reveal to these individuals that have been under the thumb of the demonic oppression of Hollywood and mainstream media and you name it, to completely reject the lies of the world, that you can't handle the world that God put you in. God put you here because he can handle it, and you can handle it, and everybody can if they trust him. That's the whole point. He didn't send us here to die. He sent us here to fight. And like I said at this on stage in Greenville, Texas, August 23rd, because Hollywood has tried to mock my God for so long and separate me and my generation from my God, we confer our struggle with Hollywood like Elijah against, the false prophets of the false God Baal, completely outnumbered, or like David facing down Goliath. But because of what Hollywood's done and because of who our God is, at Lego Man Productions, we are about to chop off the giant's head with its own sword. That's what we're about to do because it's worth it. Our kids need that, and they need to know that there's a better way to live, that there's a bigger God than government, and that he who's in you is greater than he who's in the world. And so there's nothing that this world can do to take that from you.
Amen. Well, when you got the news that you were pardoned, where were you, and what did you feel when you got that news?
Well, by then I had been taken to the Pittsburgh halfway house. I filed a lawsuit against the warden of my prison, and I put Colette Peters on it, who was like the head of the BOP at the time, so it had to come to her desk, stating that my first step back time was not being given to me, which is illegal on behalf of the prison, and a law that Donald Trump signed into law in I think 2018 or whatever. So he was helping me out prior to the pardon. But I get out, I'm at the Pittsburgh halfway house. I'm told that I've been pardoned, and they didn't want to let me go. And so I made a couple phone calls, and some of the people that I called made some phone calls as well. And the Pittsburgh halfway house in Pennsylvania gets a call from the new staff at the White House saying, if you don't release Robert Morse, we're going to shut your entire building down. So after saying no, 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 we can't let you go at 11:45 at night, they're like, we have until midnight to get you out of this building. Please pack your bags as fast as possible. We need to get you out of here right now. So that was cool. And I drove straight from Pittsburgh to DC so that I could watch the rest of my January 6th brothers and sisters be released. And it was a glorious time. It felt like, the end of a movie, but it was also the beginning of another.
Have you got to meet President Trump?
Not yet. Not yet.
But you will.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, the interesting thing is I don't want to just meet him because I'm a January 6er.
Yeah.
I want to meet him because I too want to do everything within my power to save this country like I believe he is trying to do. And he also has a role in this January 6th movie. My mother got to meet him at Mar-a-Lago, and that's a scene in the movie. So we also are friends with the Loudons, who frequent Mar-a-Lago often, and she has to be in the movie as well because she was whispering into Trump's ear, you have to pardon these people. These are not the terrorists that the mainstream media is making them out to be. So there's a lot of people that are responsible for my freedom, and it's not just Trump. There's a lot of people that sacrifice, like my mother, everything in order for me to be free. And so, this is my way of trying to fix history. It's my way of trying to encourage the rest of my countrymen and women to keep what has been inherited to us, and so that we never have to go through these dark times ever again. And if I can help just one person decide to be brave, and do something as incredible like Trump did for our nation, then I'll have done what God sent me here to do, which is what he sent me to do in the classroom. Teach kids to trust God and make America an even better country than how they found it. I'm going to do something that puts me in not just one classroom, but thousands across the country. We're going to stop the death of the West. They should have just left me alone because now they've made a monster out of me, and I'm going to be their worst nightmare. I'm going to spread liberty and freedom everywhere I go, and I'm going to use their own weapons against them.
Wow. Well, Robert, thank you so much for coming on today. Where can people, find out more? What's your website, and where can people buy your books?
Thank you very much. So the book it's still there, and One Question Remains can be found on Amazon. You can go to you can go to legomanproductions.com with 2 G's. There you can find what we've been up to. You can see the footage from the gala that we threw just last January. You can donate. And if you want to really contribute, we're also ready to rock and roll with investors. We got all that paperwork taken care of. So if you really want to see our country renewed and better stories being told in direct opposition to Hollywood and fight the culture war side by side with us, we can use all the help we can get. But Lego Man Productions on our socials, legomanproductions.com. And I hope to see you on the front lines because our country is definitely worth saving, and we can do it with God's grace and your help.
Wow, that's amazing. Well, Robert, thank you so much for coming on, and thanks for watching. Now is the time. We are at a moment in history that we have to take action. We're really honored for many of you that are watching that have served in the military, that have served on the front lines, but that have also served on the front lines of the battle of war. And that means praying and staying and obeying and paying the price. Robert, in May 2nd, 2020, I woke up and I heard God say these words to me: we won't shut up till you open the heavens. He told me to do 7 baptisms along the western seaboard of the United States, which we did, because when Jesus was baptized, remember, it said the heavens were opened, and he heard the voice of God say, this is my beloved son in whom I'm well pleased. And then in 2023, he told me to do these events called Open the Heavens, Let God Arise, which we did, 7 of them. And now we're coming up to the 8th one. Right now it's tentatively scheduled for May 8th, Friday evening, and 9th in Las Vegas, the 8th Open the Heavens. And so, Ashley, we're getting that finalized in the next 2 days. We will let you know more about it. Maybe you can be one of the people that comes. But we've got some patriots, some warriors, but also some Christian prophetic voices that, just like I've done in all of them, that literally are opening the portals over certain cities, because this is a battle not between flesh and blood, but against principalities and powers and mights and dominions. But we've already won. That's why he said to me, don't shut up. We've got to speak to these mountains, be thou removed. We have to take action, just like Robert's doing with Lego Man Productions, just like I'm doing with Destiny Film Studios. We're going to continue to pray, stay, and obey. So thank you so much, Robert, for coming on. Go to MeriCrowley.com if you want to help contribute, to my cause here. We're helping women that have been trafficked, women and children. And we're going to be showing my film, Freedom Cry. We always show them at my events. And we all have a panel of people. Annie LeBaire, who's got Hookers for Jesus. Got Kathy O'Brien, who's going to be there. We've got some amazing warriors that are coming. Wano Savin, just a number of people that are standing up for the cause, like David said. Is there not a cause? So thank you, Robert. Thanks for watching. Now is the time. And please, on Rumble, please refollow. I've been seeing like a battle even in the algorithms. People that are my friends that have followed me, all of a sudden they said, somehow I got unfollowed. And so please go back and follow again. Everybody share this with 5 people so we can break their algorithms, and we'll push past what the enemy is trying to do to stop our voices. And then share this with as many people you can, and go over to YouTube and follow me as well, because I was taken down many times from that platform, but we've relaunched again. So the best is yet to come. So God bless you all. Thanks for watching. Now is the time. See you soon.